Joy and sorrow meet in the road, arriving at an intersection at the same time. Which one gets the right of way? This exact circumstance is contemplated in the Talmud, and it has a deep message for us in our own day. First, a little bit of context about this Talmudic discussion. There is a prayer within our morning service excerpted from the Mishnah, Elu Divarim She'ein Lahem Shiur, that speaks of mitzvot that are so important to carry out that we're rewarded for them not only in this life, but also in the world to come, which is our tradition's way of saying these mitzvot are incredibly valuable. Yet the actions described within are seemingly run-of-the-mill daily occurrences, most of which are relational in nature. Doing gimilut chasadim, acts of loving kindness, honoring your father and mother, arriving early for study morning and evening, welcoming guests with hospitality, rejoicing with the wedding couple, and accompanying the dead for burial, and on and on. The scenario imagined by the Talmud springs from the two back-to-back examples of life's celebrations and griefs in this list: a wedding procession and a funeral procession coming face to face in the road. A bride and her joyful entourage depart from her father's house on the way to the chuppah, and in that self-same moment, a group of mourners accompanies a casket on the way to the cemetery. They meet at an intersection. What is the correct way to navigate that scenario? Out of respect for the dead and consideration to the mourners, should that group be allowed to go first, with the wedding procession taking a slight detour? Or should deference be given to the joy of the wedding couple, allowing them to proceed while the funeral procession reroutes its path? What's the answer of the Talmud? The wedding procession gets the right of way, and the funeral procession should take a slight detour. Why would this be? The answer seems clear. Life is brief and fragile, and nothing is guaranteed. Therefore, joy takes priority. We do not delay joy. I want to acknowledge that there is a certain irony to my choice to focus on joy with you today on Yom Kippur. Around the world, rabbis are likely mentioning, as I so often have on this day, that Yom Kippur is supposed to be a dress rehearsal for our deaths and a stark reminder of our mortality. So it may be counterintuitive for me to focus not on the funeral procession, so to speak, but on the wedding procession today. But that's exactly what I believe we must do. Interestingly, there's a traditional interpretation that plays on the name of this day. Yom Kippurim, the Day of Atonement, can be translated or spoken as Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim. That's just what you thought of, right? Despite the contrast of feasting on Purim and fasting on Yom Kippur, the Talmud teaches that Yom Kippur is actually one of the most joyous days of the year because it offers the opportunity for a fresh start and for reunion with God. Once that is achieved, we can celebrate with abandon as if it were Purim. On this day, Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim, we are reminded that just as we humans are imperfect and in need of repair, so too is this world of ours. And yet, through times of challenge, personally and communally, we can still have joy. The promise of redemptive joy is woven into our scripture as a through line. Take Psalm 30. Weeping may linger for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Or Psalm 126. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy and dancing. I do not need to detail for you the difficult and dark days that surround us. In fact, I feel like I could have opened today speaking not of joy and sorrow meeting at an intersection, but rather sorrow and fear and violence and hatred sitting at a four-way stop facing each other. From political unrest and violence at home, to the war between Israel and Gaza and Hamas, to domestic and global anti-Semitic sentiment and threats, to the personal but deeply affecting difficulties impacting our own individual lives and our families, we are carrying such a heavy load. In the language of Torah, we sow in tears. Yet this is exactly why we need to be reminded of the importance of prioritizing joy as individuals, as a community, and as a Jewish people, and why it's worth highlighting this specifically on our holiest of days. First, let us consider, what is joy, and is it the same thing as happiness? The closest word we have to happiness in Torah is ashrei. It's the very first word in the book of Psalms, and it's the name we give to a prayer that's included in each of our 3 daily services. Yet ashrei, or osher, in that same root, is not a word that occurs particularly frequently throughout the Tanakh. When we look at how it's utilized, we see that it's influenced often by external factors: wealth, physical comforts, success in our endeavors. It is a fleeting emotion that arises when positive circumstances occur, but those circumstances can and do change. Happiness can be sought, but it cannot be guaranteed. A word that occurs 10 times more frequently in the Tanakh is simcha, joy. The word simcha can be found in each book of the Torah, including 12 times in the book of Deuteronomy alone. While happiness is an individual emotion, the context where we encounter the word simcha elucidates that joy is experienced in relationship and in community. From the rule that a young man cannot serve in the army for a full year after he's married so that he can stay home and bring joy to his wife, to the commands regarding the festivals, specifying that not only should one's children be included in the celebration, but servants and Levites and strangers and widows and orphans. The word simcha teaches us that joy in its essence is shared. It's not something experienced in solitude, nor does it depend on life circumstance. Happiness is found in a moment. Joy is about being fully present in the moment. Should we be aware of the situations in the world around us? Yes. Must we gather together in strength to advocate for justice and help those in need? Unquestionably. Must we do what we can to raise awareness and combat anti-Semitism? Absolutely. And we must look up from our doom scrolling with regularity and live, and truly live. We cannot wait until the news is less scary. We cannot delay until we feel less overwhelmed by the sorrow of the world, until our aches and pains have gone and we achieve that milestone at work and our houses are perfectly clean. RSVP yes to that wedding. Schedule that dinner with friends. Try that new hobby. Join that Chai Connect circle here at Temple. Schedule that vacation. Do it now. Joy is waiting for us now. It's waiting in relationship and in community and presence, and we must not delay. Life is fragile and happiness is not guaranteed, so we must cling to joy. Joy is life-giving, life-affirming, as essential as the blood flowing through our veins and the breath in our lungs. Delay joy, and we are delaying life. Ecclesiastes wrote, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time for weeping and a time for laughing, a time for wailing and a time for dancing." The Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai, reflecting on this passage, wrote, "A man doesn't have time in life to have time for everything. He doesn't have seasons enough to have a season for every purpose." Ecclesiastes was wrong about that. A man needs to love and to hate in the same moment, to laugh and to cry with the same eyes. Joy and sorrow not only meet at the crossroads, but they are intertwined, constantly bumping shoulders as they pass each other in the road. At times, the wedding procession and the funeral procession are one complicated, amalgamated parade. In my work as a rabbi, I am blessed to witness this so often. The tears in the eyes of the Bar Mitzvah family as they pass the Torah from one generation to the next, missing those who aren't there to physically stand in that chain. The laughter that erupts at a funeral when a funny anecdote is shared about their loved one. We name sweet, wrinkly babies after our beloved departed, praying that they will grow to embody their highest values. Joy and sorrow walk hand in hand. This summer, Scott and I realized with horror that we hadn't introduced our children, who are 13 and 10 years old, to the movie Fiddler on the Roof. Major parenting fail, I know. It had been years since Scott and I had watched it in full, and as we watched and wept, I was struck by how poignantly and deeply the movie embodies the mingling of despair and joy in our tradition. Take the song L'chaim, to life. When Tevye joins Laser Wolf in celebrating the engagement of Tevye's daughter Tzeitel to Laser, they sing, "Life has a way of confusing us, blessing and bruising us. Drink L'chaim to life." And the line that follows absolutely floored me. God would like us to be joyful even when our hearts lie panting on the floor. How much more can we be joyful when there's really something to be joyful for? So to life, L'chaim. Nowadays, it is true. Our hearts lie panting on the floor, and yet to life in all its complexity. This is not about passive acceptance of whatever misfortune befalls us, but rather an active, perhaps even defiant choice to find and create joy no matter the circumstances of the moment in which we're living. The Torah portion we just read a few moments ago reminds us that we're all part of the covenant and we were all standing at Sinai. And just like our ancestors stood poised to enter the promised land, we stand poised at the entry to this new year, and we are exhorted, choose life. Choose life so that we and our children may live. As we are commanded to choose life, on this Yom Kippur, let us be reminded, choosing life means choosing joy. Prioritizing joy is not only essential in our own lives, but it's essential in our Jewish lives. So essential that it's my firm belief that it must be the centerpiece of our Jewish identities and therefore of our narratives of Jewish history. I bet that if I asked you in this moment to name tragedies that have befallen our people, you could rattle off a number of them practically without thinking. Destruction of the first and second temples, the Crusades, the expulsion from Spain, pogroms, the Holocaust, and wounds that are so fresh they haven't even scabbed over. Pittsburgh, Poway, October 7th. We are commanded to remember, and regarding our tragedies, we take that command seriously. Now, what would happen if I asked you to name the golden ages of Judaism? How easy would that be? Not as easy, right? Yet our history is rife with eras of flourishing and safety, comfort and joy. We might first think of ancient Israel and the periods of the Israelite kings, but there is so much more than that. We have the golden age of Babylonian Jewry, which gave us rabbinic Judaism itself, the Mishnah and the Talmud. The Jewish golden age in Muslim Spain in the first few centuries of the second millennium, filled with philosophy and literature and scientific contributions from the Jewish community, and a flourishing of Jewish scholarship with figures like Ibn Ezra and Yehuda Halevi. our golden age in the Ottoman Empire in the 15th to 17th centuries, in which Jews made advances in medicine and international trade that benefited all people and enjoyed cultural and intellectual thriving, including the first Hebrew printing press and the emergence of Lurianic Kabbalah. And on, including the Haskalah, the Jewish Enlightenment, and of course, the astounding establishment of the State of Israel and the incredible achievements of watering the desert to make it bloom, with science and literature and becoming the startup nation. Our history, of course, includes it all, and we cannot close our eyes to any section of our history, painful or positive. The question, however, is what should be most definitional in our identity, tragedy and anti-Semitism, or the beauty and wisdom and joy of our tradition and history? Those of you who were here with us on the second day of Rosh Hashanah heard me share how I wish for us as a Jewish community to cease blaming ourselves in any way for the anti-Semitism that we experience, the hatred directed our way. As I shared last week, I will acknowledge again, we could change and move, dance and twist and shrink ourselves until time eternal. That will not solve or diminish anti-Semitism. I want to add another layer today to what I shared last week. Not only must we not take on an ounce of blame for anti-Semitism, we must not allow anti-Semitism or even fighting anti-Semitism or even remembering the Holocaust, important as those are, to be the core of our Jewish identity and our Jewish story. Jewish joy must take center stage in our identity and in our story. It is not healthy for us as a community for our identity to be based on what has been done to us instead of what we do as Jews. Defining ourselves by those who hate us, that which is external to us, is not only insufficient, but it's a denial of the beauty and gifts of our tradition. Fighting anti-Semitism can be a powerful motivator, and it can bring us together effectively for a brief time. But if the fight against anti-Semitism is the basis upon which our identities are built, that is a foundation as stable as sand, which can, and I hate to say it, but will be washed away with the sands of time. Our tradition, our values and stories, our rituals and prayers, our holidays and foods, our literature and art, our wisdom and our connection with the divine and with each other, this is an everlasting, ever-growing foundation of solid stone that has weathered and will continue to stand the test of time. In 1982, Rabbi David Hartman, Zichrono Livracha, wrote an important and often quoted article entitled Auschwitz or Sinai, in which he asks the question of whether Auschwitz or Sinai should be the orienting category shaping our understanding. And while his focus was on the conception of the rebirth of the modern state of Israel, I would like to expand the question he poses to focus on our Jewish identity and our Jewish story writ large. Should the ugly demonic forces of anti-Semitism or the eternal Sinai covenant be our orienting category? His answer rings true for us today as well. He wrote, "We will mourn forever because of the memory of Auschwitz, but we will build a healthy new society because of the memory of Sinai. Who we are as a people must be defined not by any obsession with the long and noble history of Jewish suffering, but rather by embracing the awesome task implicit in the Sinai covenant." With the miracle of Sinai as our guiding light, we place the joy of our tradition at the center, our connection to God, our coming together as a community, our call to create justice in this world as a light unto the nations, the beauty of our tradition and innovation. Must we remember the Holocaust and the tragedies that have marred our history? Absolutely. Must we fight anti-Semitism? Fiercely. But let us not lose sight of what exactly we are fighting for. Scholar of Jewish history and expert on anti-Semitism, Deborah Lipstadt, was recently asked as part of a panel discussion, what can Jews do about anti-Semitism? And her response was surprising to many. She said, remember the essence of living a Jewish life. Remember the joy. Yes, the joy. And she noted that if we fight anti-Semitism without the joys of what it means to be Jewish, she said, we wouldn't know what we are fighting for. Joyful Jewish life, joyful Jewish community, joyful Jewish experiences, that's what it's all about. Our Torah portion this morning called upon us to choose life. We read, I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life so you and your children may live. I add my call to you on this Yom Kippur, on this day that can be like Purim if only we let it. Choose joy. Choose joy so that we and our children and Judaism itself can not only survive, but so that we can truly live. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks put it well. We are here. We are alive. We are among others who share our sense of jubilation. And yes, we do not know what tomorrow may bring. And yes, we are surrounded by enemies. And yes, it was never the safe or easy option to be a Jew. But when we focus on the moment, allowing us to dance, sing, and give thanks, when we let go of our separateness, then there is joy. It is undoubtedly true. As human beings and as Jews, we live in a time when joy and sorrow not only meet on the road, but they look each other in the eye. We do not have the luxury of rerouting the despair, and yet to send joy on a detour would be to reject the God-given blessings we are not only entitled to, but we must experience. As Robert Louis Stevenson wrote, to miss the joy is to miss all. So when we encounter joy and sorrow in the road, let them greet each other with open eyes and open hearts, and let us allow joy to lead the way. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. Amen.
Those who sow